Hello and welcome to another episode of Ewell Acres. Today we're going to continue on talking about our beekeeping and honey discussions by talking about how to make cream honey from raw liquid honey. Let's get started. Have you ever gone to the store and seen great creamed honey and just absolutely love it? It's a little bit creamy. It's got the consistency of peanut butter. You're able to spread it on your toast, and it tastes absolutely wonderful. And you wonder to yourself, how is it that we can get creamed honey from the delicious raw honey that we have on the toast that's on the right-hand side? Well, that is what we are going to be talking about today. But first, as a quick side note, if you like what we're doing, if you're getting value out of these videos, please don't forget to subscribe, click on that bell for notifications, and give us a great thumbs up. Not only does it help us out with the YouTube algorithm, but it also helps us so that way we can continue to spread this knowledge and continue to learn from each other with each other. First, let's talk about what creamed honey is. Creamed honey is taking honey itself and controlling the crystallization process of it over time. Now, as you can see here, this honey has been sitting for a while. It is completely solid. Have you ever let honey sit for a long period of time and it just becomes crystallized? It is completely solid. That is a natural process that happens with honey. Over time, that honey is gradually going to crystallize, and that's the sugars in the honey starting to become sugar honey. And how that happens is you're going to have an uneven crystallization process that makes it hard, as you can see here. I've got the spoon, I am scraping it, and it is nice and stuck. This is the first process that you need to making creamed honey. So, what we're going to do is we're going to take this crystallized honey that we've let sit for 6 months to a year, and we are going to take it and break down the sugar crystallization process. How we're going to do that is there's a couple machines that you can use to cream it, or if you're doing it the cheap DIY version, we're going to take this mortar and pestle, and we're going to take this crystallized honey and we're going to go ahead and stick it in the mortar and pestle. Now, when you go to stick this crystallized honey into the mortar and pestle, you have to make certain that you have enough room that you can go ahead and work with it. So it's just going to be a small amount. If you need to add a little bit later on, it's always easy to do so. So a little bit at first, it's going to be easier to work with. And what we're going to do is we are going to work with this mortar and pestle for a very long time. What we're doing is we are grinding down those sugar crystals, and so it's going to make a nice uniform consistency. And that's all creamed honey is taking a nice uniform, consistent, and forming to control the crystallization process of that honey. So rather than having large crystals, small crystals, you're just going to have all nice small forms. This is going to take a while. So through the magic of video, we are going to go ahead and speed up this process until we've ground it down for a couple minutes to have a nice peanut butter consistency. We have been grinding a while now. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got. As you can see, it really does kind of look like caramel. It has the smooth consistency of peanut butter. As we're moving it around, it's going to be much creamier. It's going to be much more delicate to work with. And you can even raise it up. It's not going to have that major runniness that liquid honey has, but it's no longer stiff like the crystallized sugar is. It has a nice, smooth, silky consistency. And this really is what creamed honey is. Congratulations, you just made creamed honey. Now, there are a couple different ways you can make this more efficient. There are going to be small batches like this that you can make it yourself, or there's larger machines that you can purchase that are hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to do it in big batches. That can be very cost prohibitive, especially for the DIY beekeeper. So now what we've got a small batch of creamed honey. Now what we're going to do is we are going to make a much larger batch of creamed honey. We mentioned before that creamed honey is the controlled crystallization process of raw liquid honey. We're going to be taking this creamy honey that we have here, and we are going to be putting it into this liquid honey. Now, we want to try and save as much of it as possible to get it in here. So we're going to go ahead and scrape off the pestle and the mortar into this liquid honey and try and get every little bit of it you can. Because aside from you taking all that work to grind it up, good raw natural honey, as we currently speak, is running in the neighborhood of probably $8 to $9 a pound. This stuff is very valuable. If you're like me, where you come from your own hive and you've been trying to help with the bees grow all season, it even makes it even more valuable due to that personal connection that you have to it. Not necessarily monetary, but sentimental value. Now, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to take this honey and we are going to try and thoroughly stir it in with the other honey, thoroughly mixing the two so they're no longer two separate entities. Now, the ratio that you want to add this is going to be 1 to 10, meaning 1 part of creamed honey to 10 parts raw liquid honey. That way, it gives you enough to be able to get the mixed in that you need to so it can affect the rest of the honey, but also so that way it's not going to be so much that you're just creating a bunch of material. And what this process is it's kind of like you're making a start and then you're helping to grow a much bigger batch. Similar to the process that you would do with sourdough bread. You have your starter sourdough bread, and then you're going to add it to the other ones so you can make a much bigger batch. And that's how you can continue on in the future of making creamed honey and not having to go through this whole process again of grinding it down. What we're going to do is we are going to thoroughly mix this product in. Now that we've got this process thoroughly mixed in, we are going to go ahead and pour this mixed honey between the creamed honey and raw liquid honey together into a pitcher so it makes it much easier to pour. Now, the types of containers that you can use range anywhere from mason jars to PET jars, just to your own personal glasses. Whatever jar you use really doesn't matter. I personally prefer using these nice food-grade PET jars just because they're relatively inexpensive and it makes it a really nice container and size so that I can go ahead and sell it to my customers at that rate. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we are going to fill these jars up at approximately 8 ounces, since these are 8-ounce containers, and it makes a nice amount of approximately half a pound worth of honey. After we get all of these jars filled up, we're going to go ahead and screw some lids on it so that way we can keep them nice and clean. We're going to keep bugs and other potential pests out of the honey from munching on it, and it just helps the product itself to stay nice and clean. Now, the reason why we have to do this is because there is a curing process. We now have the honey, the creamed honey, inside the raw liquid honey. That's going to take the small sugar crystals that are a part of it, and it's now going to gradually dissipate throughout the entire honey. That's the whole reason why we needed to have crystallized sugar honey, because those sugar crystals are now going to gradually gravitate throughout the entire jar. And that's all creamed honey is the controlled crystallization process of honey. So that way, when it's nice and complete, it's going to have that smooth consistency. Now, we just have to play a waiting game. On average, it's going to be anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks, but that can change based on different conditions that are working with it. As a quick side note, as I'm going through these jars, trying to clean them up, I'm accidentally getting some of my fingers in the honey. I'm getting my fingers on the jar. It can be very sticky. Now, these particular honey jars are for my own personal use, so I'm not as concerned about it. But if you're going to be reselling these or trying to make a profit, then it might be wise to wear gloves or go ahead and keep things nice and clean, make certain your fingers aren't getting the honey for sanitary purposes. Now it is 6 weeks later, and we have a nice, fresh jar of creamed honey that we went ahead and did. As you can tell, it spreads on nice and easy. And you can go ahead and very easily see a quick comparison between our creamed honey and liquid honey. The liquid honey spreads on nice and smooth. It has a little bit more of the amber visual to it, while the creamed honey has a little bit more consistency with peanut butter. It's been very cold this winter, and so this creamed honey has actually formed up a little bit harder than I normally like. So it is going to be a little bit tougher to spread, but it still has that spreadable quality to it. All I have to do is let them get at room temperature. They're going to warm up a little bit, and they're going to become a little bit softer, just like peanut butter. So what are your thoughts? Is it worth all the effort making creamed honey just for the novelty of it, or it's just really enjoyable because it has a little bit different? Because there is a lot of work involved. Now, there is another method that you can use to making creamed honey, and that is what's called making creamed honey from a start. This process where we're doing now with a mortar and pestle is essentially making that start. The other method that you can do is taking creamed honey that already exists and stir it into liquid raw honey. You can do this by keeping a couple jars of cream honey in reserve and using it as that start, just like your sourdough bread, and you're able to mix it in, so you're saving it for a rainy day. Or if you don't want to go through all this process of grinding and mashing and getting into that smooth consistency, then what you can do is go down to your local store, making certain that you're buying good, high quality creamed honey, and so that way you already have a starter and you can stir it into your own liquid honey. But let us know in the comments below. Do you prefer creamed honey? Do you like raw honey? Let us know which one you prefer and why. We're always excited to hear what different people's thoughts are. Thank you so much for joining us today as we talked about creamed honey and how to make it. Thank you so much for joining us. We are really glad you're here. And if you're gaining value out of these videos, please don't forget to subscribe. Click on that bell for notification. Not only does it help us out with the YouTube algorithm, but it also helps so that we can continue to learn from each other with each other. Once again, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.